This is the 12 Traditions Workshop. My name is Dean, and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 10th, 1993. Let us begin with a moment of silence, please, followed by the Serenity Prayer. Okay, first of all, I want to thank District 27, David, for asking me to be a part of this jamboree. It's really an honor to be asked to participate and introduce our next speaker. I was here yesterday and heard him and his wife speak on the sponsorship workshop, and his name is Bill N., and he is from Fortworth, Texas, and from what I read here, he was the Northeast Texas area delegate from Panel 57. So here is Bill.
That's all right. Oh, hi everyone, I'm Bill and I am an alcoholic. Truly by God's grace, strong sponsorship, and awesome home group, the only home group I've ever had. I haven't found necessary to take a drink since December 7th of 1988, and I'm as grateful as I know how to be for that. I'll show this somewhere. I don't know. Does David want this? And yes, I am here to talk about... by the way, if y'all were here for the 10:30 meeting this morning, you heard the lady who was speaking, and she mentioned that she married the speaker from last year's convention. That's me. And it's truly an honor and privilege to get to do anything for AA, but you know, some things are just a little more fun than others, and I love doing this sort of thing, and I certainly love talking about our 12 traditions, because our traditions talk about who we are as Alcoholics Anonymous. They define who we are as AA. Once heard I didn't hear it, but it's actually in one of the final conference reports. A past delegate from New Mexico back in the early 90s made a talk for the General Service Conference on this subject, and she opened it by saying, how can I truly be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous if I don't know what I belong to? And that's what these traditions are about. They tell us what we belong to. You know, something odd. I have never in my life joined anything that I didn't know what it was I was joining. A club, a country club, a civic club, I don't know, you name it, health, a gym or something like that. Alcoholics Anonymous is the only place that we join, and we don't have a clue what the heck it was we just joined. You know, we come in here, we're hurting, we're dying. I mean, all we know is that these people told us that they've got a way out of this thing. We don't have a clue. We come in here, we recover, hopefully, and then we slowly but surely take the time, hopefully, to learn what it is. By the way, what did we join when we came in here? And this is kind of what led to the formation of the traditions. The traditions were not born in a vacuum. No one was sitting around after the steps going, you know what, we're on such a roll, let's see if we can think of 12 more things that we can hang on the wall. Because in most meeting rooms, you've got a podium with the traditions on one side and steps on the other, and with just the steps, it really louses up the decor in the room, so let's hang something over here. That was not the case. The traditions were born out of bitter experiences, very bad experiences that we had in AA. Well-intentioned, but bad experiences. The 12 steps are a success story. They showed us how we recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. It's a roadmap to recovery, very much a success story. The 12 traditions were a nightmare averted. What a lot of people don't realize is our big book got we started AA in 1935. Our big book got published in April of 1939. We flew by the seat of our pants for the first almost 4 years of this deal. We had nothing to run on, no track to run on as far as recovery. And then we published the big book. We were so excited. Boy, if you ever want to read some history, and I'm a big history guy, read the history of how we got the big book published. Most of these people would have been put in jail by the SEC in nowadays times, the way the regulatory works on selling stocks and things like that. But if you think a bunch of angels put AA together, I got news for you. But anyway, they got the thing published, and it was quite the success story. But nobody was buying this book at first. We had a whole warehouse full of them. In 1939 and 40, no one was really buying them. And we were really worried about it. Slowly but surely, we had some favorable articles the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Liberty Magazine, and then finally the home run, the Saturday Evening Post, which was the biggie for us in 1941. And overnight, Alcoholics Anonymous exploded on the world. We literally quadrupled in size in 1941. We went from 2,000 to 8,000 members in less than a year because of the Saturday Evening Post article. Groups were sending letters to New York. Bill and a secretary there were trying to answer all of the inquiries, to people wanting books. And the books were very expensive. In today's dollars, they were over $50 a copy in today's dollars. Very, very expensive book. And they were trying to answer all of these. And people in AA were really feeling good about this. We had all gotten flushed with this spiritual enema, and we thought all of a sudden that we were just going to go out and save the whole dadgum world. We were doing so well with this alcoholism. Let's go fix everybody else's problems. Let's solve the problems of drugs. Let's solve the problem of how they treat alcoholics in hospitals. They really are lousy with us in hospitals. Maybe it's because we didn't pay our bills. I don't know. But let's build our own hospitals. Let's have alcoholic research and education. Let's be the spearhead of a new spiritual movement. All of these grandiose ideas we were dreaming about, they seemed like a good idea at the time, which describes pretty much every problem I've ever gotten into, sober or drunk. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And it did. They were all well-meaning. But each and every one of these led us to realize that the more we got into that stuff, the more Alcoholics Anonymous got into business. And no Alcoholics Anonymous member or group has a right to put Alcoholics Anonymous into business. We have no business being in business, period. It tells us that in Tradition 6. We should never go into business. Because when we do, it diverts us from our primary purpose. It diverts us from what we're here for. If we're busy running a business, I don't have time for the drunk that just walked through the door a few minutes ago, because I got to count my money, or I got to see how this business is doing, or this thing's doing, or whatever. And we begin to get into trouble. And of course, when we got in trouble in the early days, everyone called Bill about it. What are we going to do? There were issues with membership. A lot of groups weren't real welcoming to certain people who came in the group. There were a lot of groups who looked down on their nose. They got off, like I said, they got sober, and suddenly they're feeling very uppity. Oh, we don't want those kind of people here in the group. They're kind of low-life types. We don't want those people. Boy, how soon we forget where in the heck we came from. Bill and a man named Earl Treat sent out a survey and asked groups what they felt like membership requirements should be for AA, and they got back a very long list. And the funny thing about that list is, had that list been in place at that time, Bill and Bob themselves could not have been a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And right then and there, they knew we were in trouble. And so Bill sat down, and by the way, before I tell you this, all of this can be read in AA literature. One book called The Language of the Heart, one of the best kept secrets in AA, has this entire history from page 1 all the way up to a little over page 100. Language of the Heart is Bill Wilson's writings to the grapevine. He used the grapevine to communicate with a fellowship. We didn't have mass communication back then. Phone calls were horribly expensive, long-distance calls. It's the only way you could communicate with a fellowship. So he wrote articles to the grapevine. The Language of the Heart is a compilation of all of these articles, and everything I'm talking about here, you can read this. And the cool thing about that Language of the Heart and the traditions part is you get the opportunity to get right inside of Bill W.'s head, to see to feel what he was thinking, the struggle he was going through. How are we going to do this? He knew that drunks didn't handle rules very well, but he also knew that we needed unity. He wrote an article called Rules Dangerous but Unity Vital that addresses that very subject. He wrote what he was struggling to call this thing. You will hear people, I've run into it all the time. I've heard people with lots of sobriety say that the traditions are about our relationships, our personal relationships. No, they're not, period. If you want to use the 12 traditions in your relationship, knock yourself out. There's awesome principles in there that work quite well in relationships. They really are. That's not what they were written for. They were written for the survival of Alcoholics Anonymous. Matter of fact, the working titles of the traditions originally were Points to Ensure Our Future, Points to Ensure Our Survival, They eventually evolved into the 12 points of AA tradition and finally just settled on the 12 traditions. That's where it all settled. But we were in trouble. And a lot of historians will tell you, I've sponsored one of the best-known historians in AA today, archivist historians in AA today, Arthur S. You'll find his work all over the place. And they all agree that we came very close to losing AA before we even got off the ground. Because, see, these groups were popping up all over the place. There was no communication amongst anyone back then. Groups were popping up. They had a guy there with a big, or a gal with a book. In Texas, they had a gal in Houston, a guy in wherever, Dallas. And they showed up in the town one day with a big book to start AA. Okay, we knew how to recover. We knew how to take someone through the steps. But we didn't know what a group was. We had no idea what is a meeting, what is a group, who can be a member, who can't be a member, so on and so forth. All of these things. AA had no track to run on as to what AA was going to be. And as I said, as you read these articles in Language of the Heart, by the way, the original essays for the 12 traditions are in Language of the Heart. Most people you ask, where do you find the original essays of the traditions? They'll say the 12 and 12. Those are actually the second set of essays. The original ones are in Language of the Heart. The second set are in the 12 and 12. The third set are in AA Comes of Age. Great stuff in AA Comes of Age. And then there's smatterings of it all over other places in literature, in AA literature. So Bill was struggling with this. What are we going to, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make these, how are we going to keep these from being rules, but yet have a force behind them, powerful enough to make people want to follow them? And that was the struggle he was met with. He wrote what is the long version of our traditions. He never dealt with it. By the way, the short version of the traditions, the sad truth is that's the version of the traditions that most people will ever look at in Alcoholics Anonymous. That is a sad, sad truth. Very few people will ever go past what you see hanging on the wall in the group. If that's all you ever look at, it's like reading the table of contents of a book and throwing the book away, thinking that you know what the story is. And you don't. You really don't. There's no way. It's a summary. It's a table of contents. There's one tradition in particular in there that it turned into a real pain today. I'll talk about in a few minutes because they shortened it just a tad too much versus what it says in the long version. The traditions we adopted, we finally got them ready. And in 1950 at Cleveland, the first international, they were adopted by Alcoholics Anonymous, formally adopted. The long version, the short version of the traditions were actually printed in November of 1949 in the Grapevine. Earl Treat from Chicago, who started AA in Chicago, asked Bill, could you kind of give us a summary of these, because the long version, some of them are very long-winded. And Bill wrote these, and they printed them in the Grapevine. We didn't formally adopt those until the conference approved the 12 and 12 in 1953. So anyway, the long version of the traditions are what we adopted. In order to truly understand the traditions, I have to read the long version. I have to read the essays, the supporting essays. There's a lot written on traditions in AA because, as I said, it's about our survival. But it's not so much that you couldn't read it in one day. I mean, you can read everything Alcoholics Anonymous ever wrote on the traditions, ever been written on the traditions, in one sitting. I mean, I don't know how much of it you would absorb. You have to go back and read it and reread it and reread it. I've read it so many times. I'm very blessed to come from the Northeast Texas area. I live in Dallas-Fort Worth area. We have tradition speakers up there that come to a group for an entire month on a certain night. And we do the same thing with the steps. But I'm one of those speakers. I do the traditions up there 7 or 8 months out of the year. I'm doing these things. So I get a lot of practice with it. And through that, I've learned that if I'm going to talk about these, I better know what they say. And when I share my experience with the traditions, I tell people what they say, where it says it, and my experience with it. What you don't get out of me is my opinion, my spin, my take, my twist, and for God's sake, not my interpretation. One of the biggest problems we have in Alcoholics Anonymous today is people interpret stuff. We have more literature in AA than you can shake a stick at. It doesn't require interpretation. If I read all the literature, I never ever have to interpret anything. It's all right there in black and white. The more I read, the more I learned, the more I realized I didn't have to guess what these people were thinking about. The other thing is the history of the traditions. This is so crucial because, as I said, these traditions were not written in a vacuum. Something was going on in Alcoholics Anonymous at that moment that made people go, holy cow, we got to do something about this. And each of these traditions point to something, and you kind of got to know what the backstory behind it. What was happening in AA that led them to the point that they thought, man, we got to put this up on the wall there somewhere so people can see it. You can read all of this in the history of AA, the various sources of history. It will tell you all of that. Tradition 1 tells us the purpose of the traditions, and the remaining 11 traditions tell me how to accomplish the purpose that Tradition 1 spells out. Tradition 1 says our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon AA unity. Okay? And then I don't have to figure out what that means because the next 11 are going to tell me how to accomplish the common welfare of Alcoholics Anonymous. What is our common welfare? Our common welfare is alcoholism and how we recover from it. That's it. We have no other purpose in here. We don't care about your snorting, smoking, popping, poking, your inner child, how to find your place in the cosmos, what they said on Oprah and Dr. Phil, what your therapist told you, what your minister told you, what you read in this feel-good, warm and fuzzy self-help book. None of that matters in Alcoholics Anonymous. We're here for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is recovery from alcoholism. Alcoholics Anonymous gave away their 12 steps long time ago. We could have copyrighted them. There were several opportunities to make it where no one else could touch this stuff. There was even a congressional deal at one time that we turned down. But we didn't do that. We gladly let other fellowships use our 12 steps. And there's over 200 of them right now. We do that, number one, because it's the right thing to do. And number two, so we can get those people out of our dadgum meetings. God knows they clutter up our meetings. And I know I make some people angry when I say this sometimes, but every time a non-alcoholic opens their mouth in an AA meeting, it ceases to be an AA meeting. Everything in the literature tells me that it's one alcoholic sharing with another is the basis of our recovery. If I am not an alcoholic and I'm talking in an AA meeting, I am taking away the purpose of an AA meeting. And like I said, I've had some Al-Anons come at me with knives before, and God knows I love Al-Anons. Some of my best friends are black belt Al-Anons who would never dare step into an AA meeting and try to talk in my meeting. Nor would they let me come in their meetings. As a matter of fact, I might leave with less body parts than I walked in with if I tried it. So I've got to remember that. We have a common welfare, a common purpose, and a common solution. That's it. We have no other reason to be in Alcoholics Anonymous. There is no secondary purpose, no third purposes. I'll get more to that in just a minute. Tradition 2 tells me who's in charge. It reminds us they're very clear that it's not me. I wished it was when I got here, but I found out real quick that no one's in charge in Alcoholics Anonymous, except the loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Now, many of the traditions use words like should and ought in them. As a matter of fact, should, ought appear in 7 of the 12 traditions. The other 5 have some very definitive words. They're very pointed at what they're talking about. And Tradition 2 is one of those. It says, for our group purpose, there is. That little 2-letter word is very powerful when you read it in that proper context. For our group purpose, there is but one ultimate authority, a loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. And then they added a second part to that later on in the short version. It's not in the long version because it takes an act of God to change the long version. But a non-alcoholic suggested the second part of this tradition to us. He was the first non-alcoholic chairman of the General Service Board of AA, a man named Bernard B. Smith, who's legendary in AA service. You'll read about all through our AA history about him. He watched drunks when drunks got leadership positions, got voted or hooked into something with a title to it, and how they acted once in a while. And so he went to Bill and he said, I suggest you add something in here. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. And thank God they put that in there. I've been in general service for over 20 years in my sobriety. I'm a past delegate to the General Service Conference. If there is money, property, and prestige in getting elected to something, I missed it somewhere along the way. I haven't found it. I was hoping there would be more to it than this, but all it did seemed like the more I got elected to, the bigger the bullseye I got on my back. But that's okay. So we have this ultimate authority, loving God, as He may express He may express Himself in our group conscience. He may not. When we get selfish, self-centered, I'm sure y'all have never seen this happen at your groups, but sometimes when there's a real controversial group conscious item coming up, you get this bunch over here that, boy, they're for it to go this way, and the other side's against it, and they start talking to their people. All those people over there, they want to do this. We got to make sure it doesn't go that way. Tell all of your sponsees, well, you know what, we need to go recruit people from other groups. Well, here's Bob. He's 2 days sober. He's still shaking. Just tell him when we raise our hand to raise his hand at the same time. Basically, load the group conscious up. You know what? And I always warn people, when I give an opinion, I will warn you, and I'm going to give one here. I believe that God, this is my concept of God. God will do for me what I can't do for myself. But I also believe that if I don't bring God into the deal and I try to do my own self-will, He gets the heck out of my way and lets me get good and beat up until I'm willing to turn back to Him. And it works. I've seen that work over and over in the group conscious. When we allow the group conscious to do what it's supposed to do, we get a good decision. I was taught that I learned to listen as if though I have no opinion. Boy, that's a tough one. What an order. I can't go through with that one a lot of times. I learned to give everybody the right to their point of view in a group conscious. No member should ever be afraid to express their opinion. If they're a member of that group, they should be able to do it without fear of prejudice or reprisal. That's out of AA literature as well. Tradition 3. The only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking. I just read you the short version. This is the one that has caused a lot of historians a lot of problems. I hate to tell you there are more requirements than that. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Everything that has ever been written on Tradition 3 makes it clear that it's alcoholics who have a desire to stop drinking. In 1949, when they wrote the short version of this tradition, they could not conceive of people crawling under the fence or over the wall trying to sneak into Alcoholics Anonymous that weren't alcoholic. It was incomprehensible that anything like that could ever happen in AA. Who the heck would be in here other than alcoholics? Well, we were going to find out real soon. As a matter of fact, it was going to hit us hard in the mid-50s. But at the time they shortened that up, they didn't think that, if you read the history on it, who else is going to be here? So I have to defer to the literature. Number one, the long version of that tradition. Our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Another reason that it's so... let me read the rest of these. Out of the original Tradition 3 essay in Language of the Heart, it tells every alcoholic in the world that he may become and remain a member of Alcoholics Anonymous as long as he says so. Out of the 12 and 12, 2 places. For what AA is really saying to every serious drinker, you're an AA member if you say so. And then the closing sentence in that chapter, so the hand of providence early gave a sign that any alcoholic is a member of our society when he says so. As I said, we couldn't conceive of people trying to get into AA before, unless they were alcoholic. And then in the 50s, the drugs hit the scene. I'm not talking about the street drugs. NA had already started. NA was well in existence. These were prescription drugs, particularly the tranquilizers. I won't go into the long story, but Milltown, which eventually led to Valley and some of the others, people were getting addicted left and right to that. Mostly it was middle to upper middle class housewives. I mean, doctors were prescribing them like they were Tic Tac, and they were getting addicted all over the place. So they get addicted, they say, well, try to go to that NA thing. They went in there, and there were some scary people to those little housewives in NA. And so they started infiltrating AA. I mean, they poured into AA, and they started causing problems all over. I pointed this out in my workshop yesterday. One of the most powerful, or in Joanne's workshop, one of the most powerful essays Bill ever wrote was something called Problems Other Than Alcohol. He wrote this to the Grapevine as well. The conference got hold of this. The General Service Conference felt this essay was so important that they made this a conference-approved piece of literature. As a matter of fact, it's so important they made it into 2 pamphlets, a shorter version that we give out to treatment centers and correctional facilities and things like that, a summary version, but the full version of the article is really quite long. It's a very long article. Most of Bill's writings to the Grapevine, he gets a little warm and fuzzy, but he wasn't warm and fuzzy when he wrote this one. This baby's got some teeth in it. And I want to read this to you. The other thing in Tradition 3, by the way, is if you didn't read the long version, you wouldn't know this. Tradition 3 was the first time that Bill put pen to paper, or anybody, that defined what an AA group is. Most people don't know that. How do you define what an AA group? Well, it's right there in Tradition 3 long version. As a matter of fact, every time a conference action, general service conference action, has taken place where somebody wanted to beef up the description of a group or whatever, the conference is always deferred to the last sentence in Tradition 3. They said, we don't need any more than that. We don't want to complicate it. Tradition 3 long version, our membership ought to include all who suffer from alcoholism. Hence, we may refuse none who wish to recover. Nor ought AA membership ever depend upon money or conformity. And then here it is, the AA group. Any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that, that's a big phrase, provided that, as a group, they have no other affiliation. Okay. So, I can take that, and I'm going to read this in just a minute. There's another place in here that I can show you. Well, I'll go ahead and read it. The definition of a group, and this one paragraph out of this, problems other than alcohol. Sobriety, freedom from alcohol, through the teaching and practice of the 12 steps, is the sole purpose of an AA group. These are Bill's words, 1958. Groups have repeatedly tried other activities, and they have always failed. It is all, and this is very important, ties back to the membership thing. It has also been learned that there is no possible way to make non-alcoholics into AA members. There you go. We have to confine our membership to alcoholics, and we have to confine our AA groups to a single purpose. If we don't stick to these principles, we shall surely collapse, and if we collapse, we cannot help anyone. I mentioned in the workshop yesterday, one of the favorite excuses I hear people talk about why they can talk about other things in meetings today, and this is more along Tradition 5, is times have changed. I love to pull this baby out and read it to them. I start reading the words. I go, you mean like this? And I'll read some stuff. Yeah, well, that's what I'm talking about. And I said, this was written in 1958. When I was a newcomer, I know I said this yesterday, but not all of you were in the room, but I remember talking to some of those people I would listen to in that first year when I'd get upset, those old timers, what do they know, blah, blah, blah. Times have changed. So I went to my sponsor and I said, oh, come on, Jack, times have changed. Jack said, you know what, son? I came in here in 1970. You know what they were saying in 1970? Times have changed. He said, your grand sponsor first walked into AA in 1950 and sobered up in the early 60s. You know what they were saying then? Times have changed. We've been hearing that crap forever and ever and ever, and it just keeps on going. And the more times change, the more things stay the same. Alcoholism is still the same chemical composition it's always been, and human beings are still made of the same stuff they've always been. And the thing that makes alcoholism has been the same from day one. So I'm sorry, things have not changed that much. They really haven't. Tradition 4, this is the tradition that everybody blamed, quotes right before they get ready to break another tradition. Each group should be autonomous. And then they pretend like there's a period after that. There is more to that. Each group should be autonomous, except in matters affecting other groups or AA as a whole. This tradition was born in the 40s along with the rest of them. At that time, we didn't know. We didn't know everything. We had hardly any answers at all of what a group was supposed to be. We were still experimenting with it. What this tradition was designed to do was to allow groups to try things. If they thought that this is what their group needed, give it a try. They gave us a list of things in the actual essay of the tradition. They warned us again, maybe you shouldn't go here, 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 but, if you want to, give it a shot. If it fails, stop. Don't do it anymore. My good friend, the archivist I was talking about, he says the spirit of this tradition is don't let an experience go to waste. But what we've perverted this tradition into, and by the way, that was the 40s. We were trying stuff. It allowed us the right to be wrong. We could fail, and there was not going to be, the AA police were not going to come down here and shut your group down, revoke your membership, or anything, kick you out of AA. It allowed us the right to try things. Nowadays, there is nothing you can think of that hasn't been thought of thousands of times. If you really have a problem and you're wondering if it's the right thing, call your district. Call your area folks. Call GSO. They will tell you. They'll inundate you with experiences. Oh, you guys want to try this? Well, here's some groups that tried this, and here's what happened. But what has happened is people have perverted this tradition so badly to the point that they use it as an excuse to break other traditions. And no tradition was ever written to be used as a tool to break another tradition. It defies spiritual logic. Why would you write a spiritual principle that was designed to break another spiritual principle? Makes no sense. Bill Wilson even warns us about, in several of his writings, about using a tradition to break another tradition. Basically, he said, don't do it. Don't do it. Tradition 5 tells us the reason we're in business in AA, although we're not really in business, but the only reason that we have what we do in AA. There's only one thing we do in AA. Each group has but one primary purpose, to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. We have one purpose, a sole purpose, as Bill clarified in 1958, because people were playing word games with primary purpose, so he wrote in 1958, a sole purpose, each group that has but one sole purpose. So get around that four-letter word soul. I challenge you on that one. It ain't easy. But the second part of that is to carry its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. I've heard people say that its message is whatever a group decides its message is. Malarkey. That is not the case. Its message is our message, the AA message. I mean, it's unbelievable how many times I've heard that doing workshop. Well, it's whatever the group determines their message. No. Our message is embodied in the 12 steps. Having had a spiritual awakening is the result of these steps. We've had this spiritual awakening. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. So there's several places you can look at in our literature, and it will tell you what our message is. We only have one message in here. There's also the way we carry the message that's included in that. I don't get up here and use salty language when I'm standing up behind the podium. It's not because I'm goody two-shoes. I'm not, trust me. Ask my sponsees. I can use pretty sour language sometimes. I dress properly when I get behind the podium. I'm not trying to impress you. I don't care if you like my suit and tie or not. I was told this by my sponsor that I will do this to show respect to Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, if I am recovered and I'm trying to transmit that message to folks, I need to look like I'm recovered and act like I'm recovered. And so many times we see that kind of go to the wayside, and that's a shame. Folks, I'm just a human being like the rest of you. I mean, I'm subject to everything. I'm no better than anyone else in this room. I don't profess to be. I'm not an authority on anything. I'm simply a student of this program, and that's it. How we carry this message, though, we can, once again, this sometimes happens in other groups. Probably never happened at your group, but there's a principle in AA that first liar doesn't stand a chance in a discussion meeting. First guy robbed a bank, the next guy robbed 2 banks. And God, by the time they get to the end of the room, that guy tried to rob Fort Knox. You can't win if you go first. So you go to these meetings sometimes, and I'm sure you've never seen one of these, but I've heard of them before. And the first person, they ask the chairperson, opens up with, anyone got a topic? Oh, my God, the most dreaded word you will ever hear in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's somebody that's sitting in that room that's been waiting for 2 dadgum months for somebody to ask if they've got a topic, because, by God, they got one. They can't wait. Well, I had a bad day. My day was terrible. And here they go for the next 10 minutes. Boo-hoo, wah-wah, how terrible their day was. Well, when they get done, guess what the next one's going to say? Well, I had a bad day yesterday, and here we go. Boo-hoo. And, oh, my God. Bad day, worst day, horrible day. Oh, my God. By the time they get to the end of the room, they're taking up a collection for that poor guy. It's so pathetic. And then they find out they got a newcomer in the room, and all of them go running up to him, and they say, if you want what we have. AA, our message is supposed to be a message of hope. We got a way out of this thing. I've sat in AA meetings when I was new. I used to sneak off to other groups. I told you about my sponsor banning me from those things early in sobriety, but I snuck off once in a while anyway. And I went off to other groups, and sometimes these groups, I thought that was mine. I just pulled my phone out of my pocket. I used to sneak off to these other groups, and some of those times I was feeling really, really bad, really bad. Now, my group is notorious hardcore by the book. I didn't hear this kind of stuff in my group, but I go to these other groups, and it's horrible. And I'd hear meetings like that. The most depressing crap you ever heard in your life. I'd walk in there feeling bad and walking out thinking, I need to check, see if I got some shells for my 38 or a pack of razor blades or something. If this is all AA's got to offer, I might as well check out. That's not what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to, I've sat in many AA meetings hurting, in horrible pain, with newcomers sitting in the room. I'm not going to sit there and vomit my tales of woe all over the table. I'm going to tell these people we have a solution. If I've recovered, I know there's a solution. Maybe I'm struggling, I'm trying to find my way back, but I sure don't need to let that newcomer see me, somebody who's got a lot of years of sobriety. I almost said a bad word, whining about things that I just really don't need to be. That's between me and my sponsor. If I've got these problems, that's what my sponsor's for. I don't do them at the tables of AA. Tradition 6 is a natural extension of Tradition 5, as it simply says that we don't lend the AA name to any outside enterprise. That includes treatment centers. That includes hospitals. That includes anything. We don't link up with anybody under any circumstances. We don't imply that AA is affiliated with anything under any circumstances. And like I said, I won't get into a lot of details. I'm running out of time because I'm going to leave a little time for some questions at the end. Tradition 7 tells us that we are fully self-supporting through our own contributions. This is one of the greatest gifts we gave ourselves. Folks, if we ever got ourselves tangled up in outside money in Alcoholics Anonymous, we would pretty soon have someone telling us how AA need to be. They've been trying it for a couple of decades now. Courts have tried to. We are so insulated from the real world as far as being able to be harassed by anyone else just by our self-support alone. I'm a past treasurer of several entities in AA. I'm currently a treasurer of 2 different entities. And one of the things I've learned about it is that saying, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Folks, we pay the piper. We have nobody to answer for but to ourselves. They, out there, can't get to us unless we start taking money with obligations to it. Traditions 8 and 9 kind of link a little bit together. They get into, we don't professionalize AA, but we can hire special workers. That would be your central office folks. That would be GSO. Those people aren't doing they're not paid 12-step workers. They are making 12-step work possible for you and me. Tradition 9 says that we should never be organized, but we can create boards or committees. That is your service structure. That is your group's structure. If you have a group conscience, a secretary, a treasurer, somebody's got to pay the light bill. Somebody's got to make sure there's coffee. That is to make sure that AA functions at your group level, at your district level, at the area, all the way up to GSO. This allows us to organize. It says AA as such. We don't organize this. That's you and me sitting in an AA meeting doing our 12-step work. That is AA as such. We don't organize that. You don't have to pass a test to prove you work the 12 steps. You don't have to certify to sponsor people. Sometimes okay. But they don't match you up with a sponsor like these dating services, to make sure you get the proper sponsor who's in touch with your feelings and you can relate to. I don't know about you, the last thing I needed was a sponsor I could relate to when I came in. I needed one that was so foreign to me, the way I was living. Anyway, so that it allows us the opportunity to do these things. Tradition 10 says we have no opinion on outside issues. It does not say that alcoholics have no opinions. We got a boatload of opinions. I don't know how many people are in this room, but I bet we got 10 times that many of opinions for every person in the room. Just ask us. But AA never lends their name to any type of opinion on anything in this embattled world, so to speak. Tradition 11 and 12 both talk about anonymity, but they talk about 2 different types of anonymity. Tradition 11 is my anonymity at the public level. I am not to disclose my name or photographs or anything at the public level. That includes the internet, folks. It includes everything. I hear people all the time say, well, I don't care who knows I'm in AA. Well, that tradition, I'm sorry, is not designed to protect your anonymity. It's designed to protect Alcoholics Anonymous from your stupidity by breaking your anonymity. Because we break our anonymity out there, then we end up drunk. What do people think about Alcoholics Anonymous then? I guess it doesn't work. And some of the worst people to do this, as we well know, are celebrity, folks. People who are in the celebrity limelight. Oh, I've cleaned my act up. I'm sober today, and it's all over the magazine or paper or whatever, and I'm in AA. And a week later, they're arresting them, and one more time, locking them up, and here we go. This is what this tradition is designed to do. It's not designed to protect me. It's to protect AA from me, and that's what I'm going to follow. And then tradition 12, the anonymity in that one is my anonymity inside of AA. Not telling you my last name or how to contact me, but that I'm nothing but a small part of the great whole in AA. I don't do this to stand out for special recognition, for special reward. All I get out of this is another day of sobriety, just like everyone else. I'm taking my turn here today. That's it. Nothing else. I'm to toil in anonymity in Alcoholics Anonymous. I do this out of the spirit for altruistic purposes, to give back to the fellowship that so freely gave to me. You know, the 12 traditions, when I was new, I remember looking up on the wall and I thought, these things are just a bunch of rules. One by one, I had experiences. The closer into the middle I got to AA, the deeper I got into service, the more I got to see experiences that happened, and I can tell you hundreds of stories about those. And each and every one of those was one of those aha moments where I said, oh my God, I see now why we have these traditions. I've seen some very tragic things happen. They were just a bunch of words on the wall when I was new, but I've taken those words down the wall, off that wall, just like the steps, and I've integrated them into me, into the fiber of me. Each and every time we break these traditions, we're harming AA as a whole. We're harming that next alcoholic's chance who hasn't walked through the door yet, that we may not be here. Because, folks, I promise you this, they will never take Alcoholics Anonymous down, those people out there. If we ever fall, it will be from within. And with that, I'm going to stop, and David told me I could field a couple of questions. We don't have a whole lot of time, but if anybody's got any questions, comments, or experiences, I'd be glad to do whatever with them. Yes. I got your question, and that's a good one. When I was alternate delegate, I was working directly with my primary delegate when we were dealing with an issue at the conference at that time where they rewrote and approved the AA group pamphlet. This has been an issue that's been going on for some time. I'm going to tell, I personally don't, this is my personal view of this. I don't like any type of specialty meeting. People ask me all the time, do you go to men's meetings? I go, yeah, sure. We got a bunch of men's meetings in my group. We have women's meetings. We just happen to have them all together. We call them AA meetings. You know what? Anything that puts another requirement on me for being in that room goes against Tradition 3. The General Service Conference, actually, it says some AAs come together as specialized AA groups for men, women, young people, doctors, gays, and others. Now get this. They give you that. That's like, here you go. Yeah, sure you can do that. But here's what you got to do. If the members are all alcoholics, and if they open the door to all alcoholics who seek help, regardless of profession, gender, or other distinction, and meet all the other aspects defining an AA group, which means they have no other affiliation, they may call themselves an AA group. So they kind of gave it to you and then took it right back from you. The problem I have with, I hear people all the time say, well, okay, our men's meeting. Well, if a woman shows up, we'll let her in. How nice of you. Or whatever, who is any type of specialty meeting. But the moment you post that on your schedule is something you have already created, the illusion of exclusion. Whether you intended to or not, that, you know what, this is a special meeting, you're not really allowed here. I'm a real stickler when it comes to the traditions. I don't go to any specialty meetings. I just won't do it. But people are free to do it, according to the AA group pamphlet, if you let everybody else in. So I hope that answers your question. There is literature to back that up. Anything else? Time right?
What about the outside literature?
A group can certainly do that if they want to. There's a lot of things you can do in AA. Sometimes it's not a matter of can you do it, but should you do it. The problem with outside literature is, let's say someone wants to, I'm just going to grab something, I'm not picking on anybody. Let's say somebody brings their Bible in one night. Well, guess what? The next night, somebody wants to bring in their Buddha book. Or somebody wants to bring in the next night their Al-Anon book. Well, hey, I've got a great diet and exercise book. I've got a great spiritual giant book. Pretty soon we got a room full of books and no AA. See, it's all in what we start. Once you open that door to one piece of outside literature, you've opened it for everyone. The purpose of conference-approved literature. By the way, conference does not disapprove any literature. AA is not against anything. They're for AA. Everything is, the traditions is written for AA, not against somebody. Purpose of conference-approved literature, all decisions of AA on literature is made by the fellowship. I don't know if you know that. There's an office in New York. There's a conference every year. I went to them. They don't get to decide. It's voted on by the fellowship. 93 of the 135 voting members of the conference are delegates, over two-thirds of them. Delegates are elected by the fellowship. I represented the 500-plus groups of the Northeast Texas area when I went to New York. And that's how we keep the final voice in the fellowship. So when we vote a piece of literature conference approved, it says we have vetted this. By the way, you can go to AA.org and they got a deal on conference approved literature that for free that you can download and read. It's awesome. It'll tell you everything you ever need to know about it. But it says that this piece of literature was vetted by the fellowship, voted on, and we all agree it's our literature. Okay? That's the difference in it. So if we start bringing outside stuff, it boils down to where does it end? Okay. Does that help? Okay.
Hi, thanks. I enjoyed your presentation. One thing that the daily reflections, it's a book that I'm not really that big on. It's an AA book, but I never read anything that where Bill Wilson contradicted himself. But there are contradictions in that book. If you look at January 8th, it's contradicted on September 8th. So by something that's written below what Bill Wilson wrote. That's why, I have a problem with that book. I don't know how you feel about that.
It's conference approved, but I'm with you on that. If you know the history behind that book, a lot of people wanted the 24-hour book and what was the other, Little Red book. There was a lot of these that we couldn't get, or we could, but it would have cost us to do it. And once you start approving somebody else's outside literature, the line will be around the block. So Daily Reflections, a lot of books were written after Bill died that I don't think would have ever seen the light of day if Bill had still been around, I'm telling you. Living Sober, Daily Reflections, don't even get me started on those, but they are conference approved. Personally, I wouldn't, Daily Reflections is tantamount to birdcage liner in my book, so anyway, but that's my opinion. I promise you I wouldn't have had an opinion. They are conference approved, so I can't deny it. If a group wants to use it, it's conference approved literature. I agree with you. There's some unbelievable discrepancies in that book. And I could spend another hour talking about Grapevine too, but don't get me started on that one either. Where? Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Where was his inspiration for him? I guess that's on. Well, obviously he was talking to a lot of different people, but most of the historians will tell you that Bill did almost all the work on that himself. You read the essays in Language of the Heart, you get that sense. Most historians say that the traditions were Bill Wilson's single most important piece of work he ever did. That includes, now he was just part of the picture with the big book. That was a pretty darn important piece of literature too. The traditions were his baby. Those were his baby. And had he not gotten those through, there's a good chance we wouldn't be having this meeting right now. I don't think AA would have survived into the 50s hardly if we had not done this. We wouldn't have lasted too much longer. There's too much, and there's not enough time today for me to go into all the background with the history that these came from. There were a lot of influences. The opinions on outside issues, for example, came from the Washingtonians and the Oxford group. We got that. We learned some hard lessons. They made some serious mistakes in those two organizations. They lost. The Washingtonians went to the dustbin of history, and the Oxford group had to change their name because the leader of that, Bootman, made a comment about Hitler not being such a bad guy if he would learn to channel his energy in a more positive way. And the next day it was in the New York Times that he supported Hitler, under Oxford Group supports Hitler, And so the next thing you know, they're changing their name to Moral Rearmament, So it's like, so much for Oxford Group. But there was a lot of inspiration, a lot of bad experiences. And you can read almost all of the Language of the Heart, but the essays, the original essays in the Language of the Heart on the traditions are very nuts and bolts about the traditions. When Bill wrote the 12 and 12, I love the tradition articles in the 12 and 12. They're masterpieces. They take basically the core of the nuts and bolts of the traditions, but they expand it into anecdotal, story. They tell you a story on why that tradition came about. There's a lot of great stuff. Tradition 4 comes to mind. Tradition 6 has some great stories. Tradition 3, oh boy, they got 2 wonderful stories in Tradition 3 about how Tradition 3 came about. And that's some great sources for that. You can see all the inspiration on that. And anyway, that's all. I hope that answered you. Yes, sir? A has no opinion on outside issues. We have a yellow sheet, a guideline on court papers on how A will not, according to the 6th tradition, we do not endorse or affiliate with anyone, actual or implied. Okay? So we came up with a policy that we said we will be willing to do this in the spirit of cooperation. It says while an AA group may cooperate with anyone, such cooperation ought never go as far as affiliation or endorsement, actual or implied. And then implied is the one that bites us in the butt a lot. But AA gives us guidelines on that, on what groups, it's really up to the groups. They have no opinion on it whatsoever. I know groups that won't touch them with a 10-foot pole. My group stamps the group's name. We will not sign names on there because of some bad experiences. People have been subpoenaed to court because of court papers. AA members have been subpoenaed to court. A lot of problems with that. So the GSO or the AA, the headquarters, New York, kind of leaves that up to the group. But they give us, there's an excellent guideline sheet on that. It's called the AA Guidelines. You can find them on AA.org. They're yellow sheets. There's actually some out there on the table on some. They've got one for public information, one for corrections, one for just about everything. Our relationship with Al-Anon, how conventions work, that sort of thing. Anyway, I think my time's about up, isn't it? You okay? We talked about that in the workshop yesterday, and some people mistook what I said about that. I think the 12 and 12 is a good book as long as you understand what it was written for. The 12 and 12 is not written to take the steps. I got somebody who got very mad at me yesterday because I said that, and I said, I'm sorry, but it tells you the 12 and 12. It's a reflection, looking back 14 years after the publication of the big book. They looked back and reflected on where we have come in 14 years. It's to help it, as it says in the foreword, to help deepen our understanding of the 12 steps. It's a look back, what did I do here? It never was designed to be used with a newcomer, taking a newcomer through the steps. As a matter of fact, I personally find it very deadly. The 4th step in the 12 and 12 will send most newcomers running for the dadgum exits. It's too scary. The big book has a very simple 4th step designed to get these guys in and gals in, get them hooked, and get that stuff cleared out. We can do the deeper inventory as we go along. 12 and 12 offers some really great stuff in that regard. The 12 and 12 also has a couple places it conflicts with the big book, and that's always kind of troubled me. But as a whole, it's a good book. There's some great stuff in the 12 and 12. The traditions alone, if you don't like the whole thing, tear it in half, call it a 12. Just take the traditions with. You laugh. There are people that actually do that. They get their big book and they tear the 12 and 12 in half and they bind them together with the big book. I think I'm done. I don't want to cut in Jonathan's time. Thank you.